Good morning, everybody. My name is Strimtom, and today I'm here to talk to you about something you might not know much about. A very interesting topic that is varied and all over the place in Dungeons & Dragons Online. And that topic is champions. You see, champions are a type of monster that gains special powers based on the higher difficulties in which you play in Dungeons & Dragons Online. Knowing how to handle each individual champion is essential to your success, because if you know what to do when a champion shows up, you're going to be able to take care of it and not die, which is really important in the regular game, and even more so in the hardcore difficulty setting. Now, I was doing a live stream a couple days ago, and I was extremely drunk. I drank like half a bottle of Fireball, and I couldn't really see my screen anymore. However, I was still able to call out the different types of champions that were there when they needed to be called out, so my team could avoid them and not die. A lot of people in my chat noticed this and realized, wow, I don't even know what some of the champions do. So I want to take the time today to tell you about the different ones so you know exactly how to stay safe. So, to get started, what exactly are champions? Well, champion monsters are monsters with higher stats that spawn in hard and higher difficulty. So if you're playing on hard, Elite, Reaper, you can encounter champions. They can be any monster, as long as they're not a red name, so they can't be boss monsters, and the quest has to be a minimum level 3 or higher. So your harbor quests, you're safe, but once you hit the waterworks or go into the marketplace, you're going to start encountering champions. No matter what type of champion you find, they all happen to have extra health and damage, and those stats are based on the quest level. So if you're doing a level 3 quest, then champions will get an X amount of extra health and damage, versus if you're doing a level 10 quest, then they get even more health and damage. As well, they gain special powers based on the type of champion. There are 3 different tiers of champions, although for the purposes of this video, we're going to imagine all champions as tier 3 champions, so you can work accordingly. And once you kill them, they drop all sorts of cool stuff, which you can trade in the Hall of Heroes, called Mysterious Remnants, so you can get stuff like the Mysterious Cloak, which gives you extra healing amplification, or just useful augments. So, what are the different champions of Eberron? I've organized them by the different threat level. So we have low threat, medium threat, and high threat champions. The low threat champions are generally things that don't have a lot of crazy on-hit damage effects, don't have anything that's going to stack on you, anything that's really going to kill you. They might be annoying and have things like death block that are frustrating, but they don't really present that much of a threat regardless of the type of monster that they get thrown onto. The medium threat ones are things that are going to always pose some type of threat and can be very dangerous on certain types of monsters, such as spellcasters or other things. And then the high threat are things that are always going to kill you every time. They're going to kill you, they're going to come out of your computer, and they're going to kill you in real life. So you got to be really careful about these types of champions because they're dangerous. So to start off, we're going to start talking about the low threat champions, and that starts with the Pandamonium. So Pandamonium champions aren't really super dangerous. They have Mind Block, 50% blurry, slow on hit, vulnerability on hit, and a healing debuff when they hit you. So what this means is since that is 50% blurry, it's blurry. You can use True Seeing to completely avoid that modifier. So now all of a sudden, okay, so you can hit them now. If you don't have True Seeing, they can be quite dangerous, but if you have any type of True Seeing or the ability to bypass concealment, these monsters just take damage. They have Mind Block, so you can't hit them with a Hold Monster or a Charm, but other than that, they really don't do a whole lot. They slow you on hit, but it's a very minor slow. They give you vulnerability and a healing debuff, but generally they just die if you have True Seeing. So not too dangerous. Pandamonium champions, as long as you have True Seeing, you get past them every single time. Next on our list is Stygians. Stygians are like the Pandemonium, except you don't have to do anything. They have a healing debuff. Apparently I put healing debuff on here twice. Good job, Strimtom. They have a slow on hit, and they have a save debuff on hit. And they also have death block. So you can't instant kill them, but they can't instant kill you either, because they don't really do anything. There might be a situation where a important shaman or caster gets this, and then you're like, oh, I don't really like the fact that this monster has this buff, or maybe even an orange name type creature, but in most cases, if there's a Stygian, who cares? You just kill it, it doesn't have anything dangerous, it just has some extra health and damage because it is a champion. To follow right up after that, we have the Shadow Marked. Shadow Marked are exactly the same as Stygian. They have a healing debuff, they have True Seeing, they have Death Block, they have negative resistance, and they have incorporeality. So you can't instant kill them, and they're slightly harder to hit because they have some amount of incorporeality, but again, that's pretty much it. Maybe if you're playing as some type of Pale Master, you might care about Shadow Marked because they're negative resistance, but at the end of the day, if you're a Pale Master, just say, okay, I'm going to hit you with Fireball, and then the monster still dies. So Shadow Marked, not really a big deal. Sure, they get True Seeing, but there's multiple layers of defenses, so you can kind of avoid this pretty easily. The next up on our list is the Fey Touched. Now these ones, again, they're low threat level because they're not really very dangerous. They don't have any damage modifiers. However, what they do have is evasion modifiers, which can make them quite annoying for melee type characters. If you're a spellcaster, you can literally ignore something when it says Fey Touched and just kill it anyway. But if you're playing as a melee, they have 50% blurry, so if you don't have true seeing, you're barely going to hit them, and they have dodge. I don't know how much dodge it is, but if I had to guess, it's somewhere between 30 and 50%, which means they're going to be dodging most of your attacks. If you don't have true seeing, you're only going to hit probably 1 in 5 attacks on a Fey Touched, so make sure you have true seeing to get past this. They also have Enchantment Ward, so you can't hit them with enchantment spells like Greater Command, like Mass Hold Monster, or anything else like that. So you got to make sure that you're focusing on just doing damage to Fey Touched, and then they have True Seeing like most other champions. But again, other than that, it's not really too big of a deal. And then lastly, we have the Skyborn. So Skyborn are actually the one champion that has a damage over time effect that I said is a low threat level. And there's a couple reasons for this. My personal preference as to why I think the Skyborns aren't that important is because lightning resistance is very, very prevalent. A lot of different classes, characters, races get access to some type of lightning resistance, whether you're playing as a Tiefling or a Dragonborn, whether you're playing as a Tempest Ranger or a Pale Master. Lightning resistance and lightning absorption is actually very, very common in Dungeons & Dragons Online. So they are probably the least dangerous of all of the damage over time effects. Now you still want to be a little bit mindful. Anything that says dot on this screen, so like electric dot up there, or poison dot, if a monster happens to be a champion that shoots magic missiles, well, that dot's going to stack up for every single magic missile that hits you. So it throws 3 magic missiles. When the first one hits you, it's going to give you 1 stack of the electric dot hitting you for, let's just say, 20 damage. Then the second magic missile is going to hit you, and now you're at 2 stacks. So you're going to take 40 damage because you get 2 stacks. And then the third missile hits you, and now you're at 3 stacks, you take 60 damage. So in the course of a magic missile that maybe does 15 damage, you've also taken an extra 120 electric damage. And you have to eat that extra 60 electric damage from being at 3 stacks every 2 seconds. So this can be dangerous, but again, Skyborn, because of the prevalence of electric absorption resistance on gear and items and class effects, it's probably my lowest threat level. Now, after Skyborn, we're going to be moving into the medium threat champions. So these are champions that pose a little bit more of a threat. They're a little bit more dangerous. They have different types of offensive effects that make them a little bit more scary, as well as some more persistent defensive effects. So to start off is the Mark of Chaos. You're going to notice the screen says random, because that's right. All their effects are random. They can literally have any random effect in the game, and they can have up to 5 depending on their tier. So if you encounter a Mark of Chaos, it could be dangerous, might not be dangerous, but always just try to kill it, try to get rid of it. Just be mindful that you never know what this thing might have. It might have fortification bypass, it might have dodge bypass, it might be the most dangerous of all the champions, or it could be sitting here like it's a Pandamonium. So just be mindful of this, and always consider the Mark of Chaos when it happens. Next, you have the Arborean. Now, the Arborean is one of the dangerous melee types, or like physical damage types. I actually didn't put this in the bigger block because it has mostly defensive effects, but we'll still look at it here. So the Arborean happens to have True Seeing. It has a damage boost when it gets under half. It has Second Wind, it has Mind Block, and it has Great Sunder. So what this means is because it has True Seeing, it can hit you fairly reliably. Because it has Great Sunder, that allows it to reduce your armor class when it attacks you. It has Mind Block, so you can't just like hit him with a hold and lock him down. And on top of that, he has damage boost at half and Second Wind. So what this means is, once the monster gets under half health, he gets Second Wind, so he gets bonus armor class and saves, and he has a damage boost, so all of a sudden their damage increases. You might have noticed this effect by when you attack a monster, you hear this like whoop effect, and you see these circular like rings come out of a champion. And once these rings come out, that means they're going to be hitting you for extra damage. So be mindful of Arborean champs when they get under half health. Next, we have the Hero's Soul. So I was originally going to put this in the high threat category, but it really depends on what's going on in a different situation. The Hero's Soul is dangerous, but you might not look it. You look at the start, and you're like, Fortification, Dodge, and Death Block. Those will look like really scary things. And to be fair, they're not. However, Fortification means they can't really be critically struck by you or your allies, and critical strikes are really how you scale damage in the endgame. So they like start to eat up melee time because people are trying to beat on this thing and you can't critically strike it. Dodge chance, again, big deal, usually about 30% dodge. They're hard to hit. And finally, they have Unyielding Sovereignty. Unyielding Sovereignty is an effect where if they get under half, they heal to full health and they can remove all negative effects from them. So if they are stunned, if they are poisoned, if they are anything, all of a sudden, Unyielding Sovereignty and they're back on you. This is very scary if you're playing something like a monk because, you stunning fist a guy and that guy's unconscious and then he gets under half, heals from the stunning fist instantly. It's a Hobgoblin Slayer who does a two-handed slam on you, knocks you down, and now you're dying. So you got to be very mindful of this. Unyielding Sovereignty does not affect things that Unyielding Sovereignty that the player effect doesn't have. That the player Unyielding Sovereignty doesn't affect. So for example, if you like to avoid Unyielding Sovereignty, anything that transforms the creature will keep it transformed. So something like Tomb of Jade or Flesh to Stone or Mass Hold Monster or sort of regular Hold Monster works on Unyielding Sovereignty. So that's something to keep in your back pocket. They can't cleanse themselves out of that one. That says knockdown immunity, but I've always been able to knock down hero souls, so I have no idea. Knockdowns in DDO don't really work. And so next, we have the Flameborn. Flameborn is just like the Skyborn, except it's they have fire damage on hit, so when they hit you, they deal fire damage. They resist fire damage. They have death block. They have a fire damage over time, and they have true seeing. I put this one a little higher category because fire damage is the most prevalent elemental damage type that the players do, so having fire resistance makes some creatures quite scary, and it can be a lot of fire resistance. As well, the fire damage over time, as well as the fire damage on hit, it just hurts a lot, and they sometimes have death block. And so since the monster comes with death block, you can't just instantly get rid of it. If you're playing as like a lightning sorcerer, and all of a sudden you see a Skyborn running at you, you just go whoop, and you figure a death hit, the thing dies, and you just keep working on through the rest of the packs. But if you're playing as a fire sorcerer and you see a Flameborn, you can't just penetrate the death block with you can't just penetrate this guy with a Finger of Death. You have to actually take it down. So can be quite dangerous depending on the monster. Next is the Elemental Fury. So Elemental Fury is like all of the different elemental champions rolled into one. It gets a random elemental resist, a random elemental damage on hit, a random either death block or freedom of movement or additional fortification, true seeing, and then a random elemental damage over time. These ones can be quite scary because you don't know exactly what's going to happen, but just treat them like all the other elemental things. Take care of them. Don't let them stay alive too long because they can jump on you and do a lot of damage very quick. Infernal Pact coming up next with Resist Fire and Poison. The Resist Fire and Poison isn't that big of a deal, although Resist Fire, again, if you deal primarily fire damage, it will slow you down quite a bit. However, this creature also happens to have True Seeing and Fortification Bypass as well as a fire damage over time. Fortification Bypass is really, really scary because Fortification is a statistic that allows you to not get sneak attacked and to prevent critical hits. If you have over 100% fortification during the leveling process, you can reasonably feel good about the idea that you won't be critically hit. And critical hits are huge spikes in damage, especially depending on the enemy weapon type. But champions have extra damage. So if a monster would normally hit you for 15 damage, and a champion's going to hit you for 45, imagine how much damage you're going to take when that champion critically strikes you. Probably over 100. So at this point, if this monster has Fortification Bypass, you're in the harbor, you're in the waterworks, and it's level 3, a kobold with Infernal Pact comes up to you, he can just slam a jam you for over 100 damage, and you just died in one hit. So be very careful about Infernal Pact, because not only can they kill you in one hit because they have Fortification Bypass, if they don't kill you in one hit, they'll leave a fire damage over time effect on you. So be mindful and be careful, especially with Infernal Pacts, because they can do a lot of damage very quickly. Soulless champions are something that I wanted to put here on the medium threat because they have an effect called Uncanny Aim and Slow on Hit. So slow on hit, true seeing, I said these aren't really that big of a deal because most of the champions have some type of true seeing, and slow on hit, again, can be avoided. It's not the biggest slow. But Uncanny Aim is very scary. Uncanny Aim is something that will be a big deal to your tanks that are playing in your party, especially if you're doing the High Reaper mode, because what this means is that means they don't miss. They ignore your armor class. They always hit you. So if you have dodge, that's great. If you have incorporeality, that's great. If you have concealment, that's great. But Uncanny Aim says armor class, null and void. A lot of the tanks at endgame are running 400 to 500 armor class, which makes them nearly resistant to most physical damage, except when monsters have Uncanny Aim and they ignore their armor class. So please keep in mind that the Soulless can be dangerous for your tanks. Generally, you won't find it dangerous if you don't have a lot of armor class, but your tanks will be nervous around the Soulless champion, so take care of it for them, because that is what's going to kill your party in Reaper 7 through 10. Next, we have the Soul of Ice. So the Soul of Ice is just like the Soul of Fire, that it has cold damage on hit and a cold damage over time on hit whenever something hits you. like again with different types of monsters, anything that is repeating effects or magic missile with multiple missiles hitting you, or again with repeating effects, something like a fire elemental that happens to have its aura around it. Also, bear in mind that the cold damage over time and the cold damage over time on hit doesn't actually just have to come from things that damage you, which is really weird. All of the damage over time effects have to be very scary on casters. If you are playing against a kobold shaman that just happens to be some type of champion and it puts up an obscuring mist, by walking into the mist, you can be affected by the cold damage over time or the fire or whatever damage over time. So keep that in mind when facing off against champions and try to take them down first. Other than that, they also have a slow on hit, so just be careful around the Soul of Ice. And then the last of the medium threat is the Stoneguard. The Stoneguard has acid resistance, slashing and piercing resistance, knockdown immunity, on-hit vulnerability, and true seeing. Now, you might be like, Strimtom, this is entirely defensive. There's basically nothing I have to be scared of on this champion. And that's almost true. But the problem is, if you're playing, like most players, good builds, you're going to be using a slashing or a piercing weapon. Whether it's some type of Kopesh or longsword or great axe, or using a piercing weapon like a rapier, like a dagger, like a short sword, which are pretty much all of the good weapons, with the rest of them falling very far behind, or you have been using a crossbow. Stone Guards don't take damage. They have a really high resistance to all that physical damage. So you could just have a monster all of a sudden that is going to beat you to death because you can't beat it back. You fight it, but your damage is going from 50 damage a hit to 10 damage a hit, and it's just way outlasting you. So be careful around Stone Guards, because when one pops up, it can hurt you a lot. Now, granted, you can bypass pretty much every Stone Guard if you happen to be using one of the inferior weapons in the game. Using a weapon like a Warhammer, a Quarterstaff, or any of the other bludgeoning weapons, you can bypass Stone Guards not too hard, but then you have to deal with the fact that you're using an inferior weapon. Or play the Monk class, because the Monk class gets the best weapon in the whole game, Hand Wraps, which bypasses this anyway. Did I say that monks are really good and they have so many great bypasses? Well, get ready, because we're about to enter the high threat champions, and some of them have a lot of very scary effects that destroy monks really fast. All right, so high threat champions. These are the things that the second you see them, you know they have to die. These are priority. If these don't die, they're going to destroy your entire party, especially ranged casters, different types of monsters like that. The Soul of Cruelty right here is one of the biggest examples of this. Gotta die right away. Acid damage over time, true seeing, mind block, poison damage over time. So why is this scary? Why is this so dangerous? Well, double damage over time. If this monster hits you once, it's going to put an acid damage and a poison damage over time on you. So if each of these things is 20 damage per stack, and these stack up infinitely, one hit is 40 damage, 20 acid, 20 poison. The second hit is 80 damage, 40 acid, 40 poison. And the third hit is 120 damage. 120 damage. So if you got hit by a 3-point magic missile, it's got 1, 2, 3 little missiles coming in on you, you're going to be taking 240 damage like this. In the early game, you're dead. With full Reaper points, you're dead. There's no way to survive some of the stuff that comes out of Soul of Cruelty, and it stacks up really quickly. Now, you might say, but Strimtom, I have shit buffs. I have acid resistance. Yeah, but you don't have poison resistance, and this poison damage affects everything, including Warforged. Very, very scary and very hard to deal with. These things have to die right away. If you leave Soul of Cruelties up, you're going to die. Next, we have the Mark of Law. Now, this is another very scary champion, because it has very scary effects like force damage on hit. Force damage on hit is like the worst kind of damage on hit. Force damage, if you don't know, bypasses magical resistance rating. So no matter how much magical resistance rating you have, it always hits you for the full effect. Magical resistance rating, if you read it very carefully, doesn't have force listed because it's counted as an untyped damage. You take the whole hit. So every time it hits you, it's going to be getting a good chunk of damage through on you, especially if it's a multi-hit effect. Effects like Scorching Ray, Magic Missile will just destroy you really, really quickly with force damage on hit. So you have to be careful. On top of that, it also happens to have dodge bypass. So this is where I said monks that are really, really strong, all of a sudden they start to run into some huge problems against some of the high threat champions. Dodge bypass is dangerous. Most of monks' defenses come from the fact that they have nearly 50 to 60% dodge in the endgame. But against Marks of Law, it's actually 0. So Marks of Law say, hey, I'm going to kill you anyway. On top of that, they also have Mind Block. You can't use mind-affecting abilities on them. No Mass Hold Monster, no Greater Command, you can't even use Fascinate. They just keep running at you and trying to kill you. So be careful about the Mark of Law, especially as a monk. It's probably one of the most dangerous. Moving on, we have the Beast Mark. Now, the Beast Mark is another very dangerous champion because it has a whole bunch of just absurdly offensive abilities. It has dodge and dodge bypass, dodge about 30%. So when you're trying to hit this monster, only 70% of your attacks are going to be landing. Then it has dodge bypass, just like the Mark of Law. It has true seeing. It has second wind. So if it gets under half, it gets more defensive. More armor class, more saves, harder to hold down. And fortification bypass. Wow. Remember I said fortification bypass meant the monster could just critically hit you and almost one-shot you? Well, this thing doesn't care about your dodge, so it'll just hit you anyway, and doesn't care about your fortification. It's really scary. This thing is going to do a lot of damage to your party. However, tanks can still stand up to Beastmark. Tanks have incorporeality, they have armor class, they have displacement, so they should be okay. But you might not, so please bear in mind Beastmarks will do a lot of damage. They are susceptible to all forms of crowd control. They have no immunities, so you can just mass hold them or whatever it is. Be careful about certain types of Beastmarks that are resistant to most crowd control, like constructs, oozes, and the like, because they can just go real fast and hurt you real bad. Next is the Archeron. The Archeron champions are a very dangerous champion. They have dodge bypass and fortification bypass, just like the Beastmark, but then they also have to have their own level of fortification. This means that these monsters are basically impervious to critical strikes, and they have Great Sunder, so if they hit you, they reduce your armor class. Archerons are the ones that will kill your tanks. They hit the tanks, they reduce their armor class, they're easier to hit, they have dodge and fortification bypass, and because of fortification, it takes them longer to die. This is one of the few scenarios where you want to have some type of spellcaster who can deal additional magic damage that doesn't require being able to crit the target, or if they do crit, it doesn't work off the fortification protocol. So Archeron, very dangerous. Make sure that you're killing them so your tanks aren't dying to them. Next up on the list, we have the Demon Soul. The Demon Souls resist lightning and poison. They have true seeing, poison damage on it, and a poison damage over time. So they're very similar to the Soul of Cruelty. They're like Soul of Cruelty Light, is the way I like to think about them, in that they still have the damage over time, but it's just not acid and poison, it's just poison. The poison will kill your party. It will kill everyone that's there because it's non-resistible damage. Yes, you can get poison resistance by using a poison resistance item, but even still, that doesn't go so far when you get 3, 4, 5 stacks because you weren't paying attention to it. So Demon Souls are a high threat, and you make sure you want to get them dead as quickly as possible. Especially the poison damage on hit. Again, because it's non-resistible, if a monster happens to be a Demon Soul and hits you with a multiple strike ability, whether it's a ogre trying to combo you with the 1, 2, 3 when they throw their weapons at you, or going with the Frost Lance or Scorching Ray, you could die pretty quickly to a Demon Soul. And then after this, we have the Lightbearer. So there's a reason why I put the Lightbearer up here, and I didn't put the Hero's Soul. They're very similar because they both have Unyielding Sovereignty, and that's what most people think about them. They both have Unyielding Sovereignty, and they both have Death Block. You can't really Finger of Death a Hero Soul or a Lightbearer, so don't even try. But the reason why I put Lightbearer up in the high threat is because not only do they have Unyielding Sovereignty, where they pop themselves back up to full health, but then they also happen to have light damage on hit. And light damage is very hard to resist. Yes, magic resistance rating takes care of it for you, but you're probably not going to have any actual inherent light resistance from any other place, items, anything else. There's pretty much no light resistance on any type of gear that is named, especially in Sharn. And the only place you're going to be able to get it is probably from a twist in Exalted Angel, where you can reduce light damage by 30%, that no one really uses. They also have Uncanny Aim, so they ignore armor class. So these can be dangerous for both your tanks and also for yourself, so please keep that in mind. And if you lock them down with a stun of some kind, like you're playing a Vanguard and you stunning shield or stunning blow them, well, once they get under half, they're going to hit you again, so make sure you have something prepped in the back end. This is where you want to have something like you hit them with a Kukendo as a monk on the way in, you punch, punch, punch. Once they hit that half point, you then, before they even wake up, prep that stunning fist, and then all of a sudden they're back unconscious and you can beat them to death. So those are the champions of Eberron as I have laid out here. So you have, again, your Pandamonium, Stygian, Shadowmarked, Fey Touched, and Skyborn in the low threat, just because they don't have a lot of effects. And even the Skyborn, which has a dangerous one, it is not super dangerous because most players have some type of electric resistance. The medium threat, the Mark of Chaos, Arborean Hero, Soul Flameborn, Elemental Fury, Infernal Pact, Soulless, Soul of Ice, and Stoneguard, all having different types of mixed offensive, defensive abilities. And then the high threat, the Soul of Cruelty, Mark of Law, Beast Mark, Archeron, Demon Soul, and Lightbearer, that will kill either you, your tank, or all of your friends. So please keep in mind, these are some of the most dangerous champions of Eberron, and if you want to avoid them, this is exactly how you deal with all of them, or how you should think about them. You should say, oh, I'm playing as a monk. I have to worry about Mark of Law and Beast Mark a lot. Also, Soul of Cruelty can hurt me because I don't have magic resistance rating, and poison damage hurts a lot. But I'm playing as a monk, so I don't really care about Flameborn. I don't really care about Soul of Ice or Stoneguard. I can just fight those like they're regular champions. So now that you know what they do, you can arm yourself with the knowledge of how to take them down. So, to end my presentation here, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to keep yourself alive on hardcore or the regular servers. So pay attention to what's going on, be able to handle the champions, and also inform your team. It's totally okay to come on comms and say, hey guys, Mark of Law, let's get it first. Hey guys, there's a Soul of Cruelty in the back, and it's a Troglodyte Shaman, and all they do is spam cast Magic Missile. That's literally, and Scorching Ray. Everyone's gonna die. It's just Magic Missile, Scorching Ray, Magic Missile, Scorching Ray. We're gone. Let's kill it first. Get on comms. If you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe to me here on my YouTube channel, so you can get all the cool videos that I do. I post a video every single week. In fact, 2 videos a week, and I'm going to be doing some experiments with potentially upwards of 3 videos a week. Make sure to check out my Twitch if you like what I do here, because I stream on Twitch every single day with a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, sometimes Saturday, Sunday, and you can see my schedule just below the stream, which is super fun. And also, if you like what I do and you really want to physically support, you can also support me on Patreon. I have a new service, which I'm going to be turning into a new program called Strimtom's Build Boosters. You can submit, once you support me on Patreon, any type of build you like to me, even if it's like like shards of a build, or if you already have something written out in a build planner and you're like, I need to optimize this. How can I make this better? This is my idea. This is what I want to do, but I don't know how to make it the best. Maybe you need a level 30 gear set. Maybe you need just some cleaning up of your feats in your enhancement tree to get the most out of it. Well, no problem. You come to me, Strimtom, and I'll be able to help you out with that. And that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day, and make sure to stay alive. Champions can't take you down when you got the right knowledge.